everyone. This is Caroline Schmidt. Welcome to the webinar. As Aditi mentioned, we are going to be covering digital customer experience and demand gen for credit unions. So I wanted to give a little bit of background about our agency, eDynamic, and then I will move over into, a bit about credit unions, what's going on in the digital space there. Followed by a little bit more about customer experience and developing a customer experience strategy and how that'll lead to demand generation strategy and practice. So just a little bit of background about eDynamic. We are an established digital marketing and technology agency specializing in work across the digital ecosystem. So we work with platforms like marketing automation, CMS and website build, analytics, social, data, and mobile. I specifically lead the demand generation practice, including demand generation strategy, marketing automation, and cloud solutions. So we have extensive experience creating digital solutions for financial services. We've worked with a lot of banks and credit unions, just to give you a little bit of background about us. Through our one-to-one marketing methodology, we create personalized experiences across all digital touch points by focusing on the customer journey, integrating technology, creating a single view of the customer, and delivering data-driven experiences across all customer touch points. So essentially, we create a digital roadmap. We can help with demand generation strategy, platform selection, experience design, technology implementation. So that just gives you a little bit of background about us and really why we are very passionate about the topic that I'm covering today. So overall, what I had mentioned before, I want to talk to you a little bit about how digital is transforming banking, specifically credit unions, how that impacts the digital customer experience, what it is, its value, and how do you plan for that. And then overall, the demand generation strategy, the components of that, implementation, tracking, and the infrastructure required. So this is a very dense topic, so I'll be covering a lot of things very quickly. Of course, each one of these components has a lot more behind it, but I want to touch very briefly on a lot of topics and to talk about how this is all involved in developing a demand generation strategy. So the changing digital landscape, one of the things that if you've ever listened to a webinar by us, we like to start by talking about is how much the landscape is changing across all industries. So this is not something that's specific to banking or credit unions, but I'd like to talk to the companies. So it's become a very buyer-driven world. There's so much information, there's very little focus, so buyers are determining how they want to deal with companies, what that experience looks like, and how we as marketers have to deal with that is we have to learn to let customers deal with this on their own terms and provide to them the experiences that they want. So the key success factors to that are, essentially selecting the right customer segments to market to, offer them the personalized experiences that they want, and giving them the right offers at the right time at the right channel or device. So we'll be talking a little bit more how that impacts you throughout this webinar. And overall, how we provide a customer with that one-to-one engagement or as close as we can to that, and how credit unions must balance their personalized service with their online offerings. So we believe that if you can find the right balance between the two, they will improve the customer acquisition efforts and you will have a better understanding of your members to provide an overall customer experience. So one of the key things that, is really, if we look across the space, customer satisfaction has become such an important part of what we offer clients and members. As we've learned recently, a lot of studies have come out that the only companies that are growing are the ones that are seen as having a high customer satisfaction index for their clients. So or at least growing extensively. There was a study put out by the CFI group. They do it every couple of years, and it's called the Credit Union Satisfaction Index. They found really underlying there are 7 key drivers to ensuring whether a credit union's customers are happy. And they include products and services, information and communication, rates, fees, online and mobile banking. And it notes that improvements across any of these 7 drivers will increase member loyalty, drive up the number of referrals, and help cross-sell other credit union products and services. As marketers, obviously, there's certain things that are out of our control, but really there's 2 key things I want to focus on here: online mobile banking and information and communication. So those are really within the marketer's wheelhouse. So online and mobile banking is obviously a leading driver of satisfaction. 82% of members now do at least half of their banking electronically. So it's very important credit unions maintain and continually improve their members' digital experience. Obviously, if credit unions don't have a significant presence in this area, it's going to be difficult to stay competitive, especially with larger banks that are now offering this complete digital experience. And then information and communication. So members find information and communications to be a high factor for customer satisfaction. They want information on a credit union's products and services, and they want to have access to that information at the right time in the right place. So if I'm looking for information on loan rates or other offerings for the credit union, you want to make sure that they have that information in a timely manner when they're looking for it. So while most credit unions are meeting their members' expectations in this driver, this was identified based on respondents' lack of awareness. There may be an opportunity for credit unions to improve their marketing and communications around loyalty programs. So this is something that 36% of survey respondents were not even aware if they were enrolled in programs. So we as marketers, obviously that's not a great sign. So there are some opportunities there, but from an overall communications and information standpoint, that's really what we as marketers strive to hopefully achieve is awareness of all of our programs, making sure that we have people enrolled and they're getting the most out of those. So there's actually a J.D. Powers survey that just came out a couple of days ago. It was very timely for this webinar. It was the 2016 U.S. Retail Banking Satisfaction Survey. So it shows here, if you see, they kind of divide it into mid-sized, regional, and big banks. Obviously, there's not a credit union specific, but it gives us a little bit of an idea around the performance of different size banks within the marketplace. One of the things that was really apparent here is that big banks are getting a lot of traction out of investment in digital channels. So the biggest banks are being rewarded with the largest improvements in the digital category, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but they score the highest in online satisfaction, mobile, ATM interactions in the most recent study. So they've really made a lot of improvements there, and they have the room, and they've been doing a lot of digital infrastructure. One of the other key things there is mobile is now the most satisfying channel for interaction. So they found, obviously, and this is a trend that we're seeing across the board, not just specific to banking, but mobile banking, apps, there's been a lot of traction around that, and satisfaction with the mobile channel has improved given that there's been a lot of investment in that. So it's exceeded all other channels for becoming the most satisfying interaction channel by customers. And it's had an overall customer, impact on overall customer satisfaction as well. There's an immediate lift in the overall satisfaction when consumers use mobile banking. J.D. Powers says it's specifically 27 points on a 1,000-point scale. And it's even greater when banks provide their mobile banking customers with a highly satisfying experience. And it extends to all other aspects of the customer experience. So really, the kind of key learning there is, there's a lot of opportunity to provide satisfaction through mobile. You can mitigate the negative impact of a problem or complaint very quickly, help maintain satisfaction with a smaller branch through use of mobile, improve perceptions of available products and services, and reduce the price sensitivity if you give a great experience. So all good learnings for credit unions. And as we look at mobile banking usage by customer segment, obviously there's been a lot of traction around that. So if you look really across all segments, there's been an improvement, but where this is the most apparent is the emerging affluent. So 44% use mobile banking apps for their use, and this is an important demographic shift since mobile banking usage has increased across all customer segments, but really that emerging affluent segment, which is a great segment to have there, has the heaviest users, and big banks are experiencing growth, all virtually from demographic segments across several years, but they have been most successful at acquiring and satisfying customers in that emerging growth segment and positioning these banks for greater benefits longer term. So that just gives you an idea of kind of what the overall trends that J.D. Power is seeing there in that survey that they've just sent out. And that really lends us to, you know, how mobile is impacting that. Gives us a good idea of the new buyer journeys. So as we discussed before, customers are really using a lot of different channels. They want the information when they want it. But how that looks across banking is it's fundamentally disrupting and affecting distribution strategies in the entire customer journey. From information search on products to after point of sale services. These shifts along the buyer's journey bring with them new expectations of extremely personalized and customized interactions with bankers. While technology in recent years has increased across the banking industry, bankers are still challenged in developing a highly integrated approach. So if we look at, you know, this chart, for example, you know, as people move through this, they may have different expectations. Their customer journey goes across all of these different. So, for example, if they're wanting to check rates, select products, they may use one type of channel, but as they move to a higher level where they're looking for, you know, 401k, signing mortgage agreements, that's when they'll visit a branch in person. So there needs to be a lot of capabilities built around this customer journey and how it impacts the different channels that you're using. So we'll move into digital customer experience and how this will help credit unions. So before we kind of move into how to develop this, I want to talk a little bit about some of these key features and how they relate to that. Because the process of shopping for a new banking relationship has changed for customer acquisition and how customers interact with your bank, you can get you know, a high level of benefits from digital customer experience and improvements there. So on the customer acquisition side, using a lot of these tools, you're able to get the right best offer for a particular customer segment. So through monitoring and other capabilities here, you can really look at what a customer wants and offer that to them. You can also use this information to get the right banking rates that will compete with other banking institutions or lending sources. Really put yourself and position yourself and your bank up there. Also rewarding programs that will attract customers. So rewards programs are really a key benefit for credit unions, and knowing what attracts customers and how to continually keep them engaged with those reward programs is important. Identifying trends that can impact your new customer acquisition, so knowing certain offers are working or not working and how to promote those is key to a life cycle. Developing segmentation and customer profiles that match with your current members and offers. So really looking at how to attract new customers that fit in with your key value proposition and your other customer base, and ways to grow your card portfolio. So, expanding and attracting the right customers there. Customer retention, always key. It lets you have a better understanding of your members with segmentation and modeling. So really understanding what your take rates on certain products are, how they're doing, providing ready fit offers that align with your customer products, interests, spending habits, and lifestyle. So making sure that you're presenting them with the right offer at the right time for them, and develop an optimal contact strategy for your customers. Where do they bank? What tools are they using? And what digital properties are they visiting, so you can invest more in those. And then something that a lot of banking and credit union institutions are doing is pre-approved credit decisions that are aligned with your customers' characteristics. So if you know enough about your customers, you don't have to have them go through an approval process. You can offer them some form of pre-approved credit decision that allows them to get more interest in your offerings. So how this all impacts and how this moves forward is really digital customer experience, and it's really key to helping define and how to give this, as they say, right thing at the right time to your customer at every occasion that they come in contact with your brand. So really, making sure that you're doing that one-to-one offer. So really why it matters is if you can manage and execute customer experience strategies properly, there's really untold benefits, and I'll talk a little bit about these in a second, but you can achieve higher customer satisfaction, reduce churn, increase revenue, and have overall greater employee satisfaction. And there's some statistics here, but by 2020, they're estimating that customer experience will overtake price and product as the key brand differentiator. So all those times that you've been unhappy with a brand and moved to another brand, you're essentially looking at it in total as a customer experience. So an offer may have been right at one time, but as you engage with that brand or that company, if they're not providing the right customer experience for you, you become disillusioned very, very quickly. So if you're able to use customer experience as a brand differentiator, you can reduce at-risk revenue. So you can maintain a customer base. You can engage in existing customers for sustaining growth. So really looking at selling more of your products and making yourself as a credit union more sticky, and reduce the cost of new customer acquisition. So if you have a great customer experience, your credit union will sell itself. So looking at this by the numbers really is powerful. So I know, a lot of us as marketers have seen a few of these statistics before. I think, obviously probability of selling to a new client is only 5 to 20%, but the probability of selling to an existing client is 60 to 70%. So obviously much easier to sell or cross-sell into current clients. And costs to attract a new customer, obviously 6, I've heard 7 times greater than to retain an existing one. So powerful to create the right customer experience for your current customers. But some of the things I think, as I talked about before, value versus price, this is key, but 64% of customers think that customer experience is more important than price now. And that 55% of customers admit that they would gladly pay more for a better customer experience. So that's very powerful. And then on the other end, negative customer experience. So, 9% of people have stopped doing business with a company just after experiencing one poor customer experience. So that's a really powerful number. So sometimes we don't get a second chance as a company, as marketers, to do the right thing. And they also can be very vocal about it. So 2 times more likely to share their bad customer experiences than they are to talk about positive experiences. So yeah, it's great if we can give a positive experience and someone talks about it, but those advocates are very unlikely to talk about it. They're more likely, if they have that bad experience, to talk about it. And then, a number of positive experiences required to make up for a bad one. So one bad one, they have to have at least 12 to kind of turn around the view there. So for us as marketers, it's really better not to have to do that. So we'd like to not give a bad customer experience. So customer experience, obviously, very, very important. So overall, all the aspects of what I talked about, creating one-to-one, really engaging with someone where they want it, giving them the right offer at the right time, there's not an easy way to do this. So we as marketers know that there are a lot of moving parts. There's, we're beholden to a budget, planning, other things. But I think there's some key things that we can look at and engage with to kind of, really start down this path. And whether you're doing some of this today or, you want to do some of this today, it's always good to have kind of a framework to go do this. So I look at it in 3 kind of key buckets. So developing a customer experience plan, and that includes, probably some of you have heard, buyer personas and customer journey. I think that's crucial to helping figure out where you need to start moving the needle for customer experience. Developing a demand generation strategy is really putting all the right pieces in place to execute, and then developing a marketing infrastructure. And by infrastructure, I mean all of the components, whether that's technological, people, budgets, everything, to go and achieve what you need to do within the customer experience plan and within your demand generation strategy. And kind of one of the key things I have here for a quote is that, oftentimes it's hard to justify going to do all this, and when you're looking at and when you're expressing how important this is, one of the things that is very helpful is this quote: 37% more annual revenue to the primary bank than customers who are actively disengaged. So if you have an engaged customer, you're able to give them this great customer experience, they're going to spend more money with your bank. So you can look at it as, 37% is a pretty big number for just moving the needle in a couple of different ways. Okay, so developing a customer experience plan. I'm going to briefly, as I mentioned before, move through a lot of these components because there is a lot here, but I do want to talk about the value of defining a plan. So customer experience can be a significant investment for companies. It requires the investment in platforms, support for marketing, sales, and ITs. But the benefits are numerous across a variety of different functions for the overall experience. So, you can improve operationally, lower your cost of acquisition, better manage your contacts, campaigns, and leads, reach customers across multiple devices and platforms, overall personalize and segment communications, and then at the back end, analyze your performance. So some core things to developing this customer experience plan is looking at a value proposition. I'll talk a little bit more about this here in a second, but really figuring out what makes your credit union stand out. Understand your customers, so really having a good understanding of your customer base, talking to everyone within the organization, sales, marketing, people that interact with them on a daily basis, just having a good knowledge of that, as well as using data that you've collected before, so understanding what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked with your customers. Understanding the sales cycle, so really defining and putting information around how your customers interact with your brand, so how long on average it takes to complete a loan, how long sales has to engage with somebody to get them to purchase a high value product. So understanding more about your sales cycle is going to be key to helping define that customer experience plan. Extend your reach, be where your customers are. Really understanding what your customers are looking for, and we'll talk more about this later, but what channels are they using? What do they consider valuable? When they're looking at loan rates, or they're looking to choose a bank, where they're going to find the information that they need. Listening to your customers, so having a good feedback loop there, whether that's surveys or just those in-person engagements, social listening are some keys there. So really looking at your overall customers and what they're saying about you, your brand, and how you're communicating with them. Overall, in order to have a great experience plan, I always say it's good to establish key metrics at the start. So understanding where you want to move the needle, how you can move that needle, is core to establishing your customer experience plan. So if you know ahead of time that we want to increase customer acquisition by X, or customer retention, what our return on investment needs to be, whatever those key metrics are, if you know that ahead of time, you're going to know what you need to do to move the needle, what investments you need to make, and what sort of things you need to target as you're looking at your overall plan and your demand generation strategy. And one of the important things I want to point out here is maintaining a solution-oriented evergreen strategy. So what that means is really strategy is great, but it's a living, breathing thing. So as we start to implement and as we start to go through the process of determining what our strategy is and our go-to-market, and over time that changes as we learn more about our customers, as we learn more about ourselves, and what works in market. So if we continue down the path with something that we know it doesn't work, it doesn't make sense. So changing and continually updating this strategy is very important. So what I mentioned before is understanding value proposition. So really, for us as marketers, it's very difficult to manage a different value proposition for each customer. So as we look at the optimal customer experience, we can't offer a different value proposition to everyone. We can't be all things to all people, especially as marketers. So what really helps is to look at that core value proposition and what makes your credit union or bank different than others, and then align all of your customer strategies around that core value proposition. So you can position yourself in certain ways to different customers and different customer segments, but ultimately it all comes down to that core value proposition. And it might look a little bit different, but it'll underscore what type of experience you want to provide your customers. So the first thing that I always recommend doing when you're looking at customer experience is to start with your buyer personas and customer journey. So, you've got to know who you're marketing to and how you're marketing. And the who is the buyer persona. So usually these are research-based and are aggregate of data, facts, and interviews with buyers, even those that have chosen not to purchase. So we want to understand why they didn't choose us. And I would say customer personas are important because you can begin to put together digital personas and profiles that can be used as part of the greater digital marketing and lead generation strategy. So they help you focus on developing specific content, whether that's to educate consumers or complement your different financial products or services. And they can help you design your customer journey, whether someone is currently a customer, what their profile is versus someone that you're trying to retain as a customer. But I find that they're just helpful as you start to build that. So don't look at them as segmentation of your database. They are more than that. So they're the attitudes, feelings, and goals that motivate customers throughout the buying journey. And really how you get to those personas, I've worked with a lot of different companies to do this is really different. So I'd say these are probably some of the core ones that are really helpful is leveraging your database and digital touch points. So, you already have a lot of information about your current customers. You can leverage that to understand them, to look for trends that emerge when you look at your contact or member database, where they are, what content they consume, and what they're purchasing. Digital behaviors can also provide insight into what members and consumers are doing within your digital channels and social networks. And utilize unique tracking cookies to discover things like page views, channels, loan abandonment, downloads. So, what you already have, if you already have a website, and tracking that can lend a lot of information there. You also have your transactional behavior. So, you have information on what your members shop and buy. You can use credit card information, bill pay data. All of that data can be aggregated to help you understand more about your customers. And that includes loan payments, fees paid, spending patterns, how they use online banking, and number of products purchased. So all that's good information to kind of help develop those personas. Talk to your stakeholders and your customers. So oftentimes we as marketers kind of live in our own bubble. So we look at the information or we look at what's working. And there may be things that are intrinsically broken, or understanding more about our customers. So understanding, all of that information from sales, marketing, and customer service employees. So if you're actually looking to develop personas, I always recommend that you bring in sales and customer service and anyone else that might touch the customer at any point in time to find out more about them. And then social media listening tools. So you can get a lot of information from your social platform, understand how people perceive your brand, how they're engaging with you. And there's a really treasure trove of information, because you're not asking a customer to complete a survey. They're already telling you the information that you want to know. And then, whether this is before or after you kind of create these initial customer profiles, I always recommend to do interviews with your customers or prospects to get a good idea of, either what you're taking to market and validate what you think is a persona, or to understand a little bit more about them. Yeah, so I know a lot of people have, as marketers, seen what personas are. Every company does them a little bit differently. The ones I'm displaying here have a lot of different attributes. So what information you get to, or you're able to get to today, can help form this, and you can get as specific as you want. But really, I think it boils down to 3 components that you really should have as part of your profile. A broad description with the key things specific to the profile, wants and the needs of the customer, and the channels they frequent. So that's kind of the baseline of what you're going to need to look longer term at this. And yeah, this is just an example of something we've done, or a very short 2-hour session of really looking at what this can be. So it doesn't have to be very complex, but you can start off simple, and as you start to build these profiles over time, they can get more and more complex to what you kind of see here, where they've done a very, very, very specific look at what their customers are, and they have a lot of this data. But I want to demonstrate that it can be as simple as this. And then moving from there and taking what you kind of developed with your customer personas is the customer journey. So we know who our customers are now. We have to know the how and where we provide the information. So this helps you provide a unique experience. And customer journey is very complex. There's a lot of touch points to this, and it can be a little overwhelming. But there are some key things that we can do here. So I do want to pause here and say that I know a lot of you have probably seen customer journeys, or seen things along the funnel that are very linear. I think that's one of the big things that's changing, right? So there's not a, I provide information, customer makes a decision, engages with them, right? It's customers going out and looking at 20 different pieces of information, they're retaining it in different channels, and they're making a synthesized decision based on all of that. So there's an exponential number of experiences and journeys that can be developed to provide these one-on-one experiences. I think, obviously this is a challenge, and it's difficult to develop individualized experiences with the finite amount of time and resources that we have. So really consolidating the process by using those buyer personas can help us develop the specific path. So we look at, these are ultimately the customers we want or that we have, and how do we make sure that we address their needs within each one of these different buying stages. So, and below are a couple of key questions of what you can ask as you do this journey. But creating a journey map, I think here's some key things that you can look at, and these are a great start, is really looking at when your buying cycle has begun. So, if I look at a certain process within a credit union and I say, I know that the buying cycle has begun when someone starts to shop for rates. So if we can see triggers or alerts that the buying cycle has begun, we can really start to engage with that customer. And understanding your business and your feedback from your customers can help you identify those problems that that customer is coming to you to solve. And if you've determined that they want to switch banks, or they have a new job, want a car, or a home purchase, you can start to look at how they begin the process there. From there, you want to identify the customer path, the stages of your sales and marketing funnel. So after your trigger, what is the most likely stage to identify and entry into each of those stages? So your customers will go through, while navigating digital or physical paths may be different, and you need to look through your personas and your initial qualitative and quantitative research to have a pretty good idea of the process your customers go through from awareness to eventual purchase and then their subsequent interactions. So you want to use this information to learn how customers are guided from their next steps to their next steps throughout their journey. And throughout that, you want to align the customer goals and behavior with those different stages. So put thought into what your customers want to achieve as they move through each phase, and then you'll be able to see if you have the necessary information, content, support, or services to help achieve these goals. So that piece, aligning customer goals and behavior, can really highlight to you where you might need to develop additional content, where there's certain things that are lacking there. And then helping determine the customer touch points. Think of the touch points, so the channels. So again, this is key. So what are people using within each of those different cycles? So as I mentioned before, as we highlighted, maybe the only time they visit a branch is when they want to sign their mortgage agreement. So everything is done through different channels before they come there. But really understanding when someone wants to engage with you in each of these different channels is important. And then determining the customers as they engage with you or your company, what they're looking for within each of those touch points. And we'll talk about moments of truth here in a second. But and then any questions or concerns that arise throughout each of these stages. So you need to make sure that you're addressing all of your customers' questions throughout this, and that'll help guide you in developing content, right, as you move through each of these phases. As I mentioned before, really looking at touch points are these things that are really triggering each of these processes. So other credit unions, this is a view from CU Grow of kind of what these touch points that other credit unions have started developing these customer experiences around. So number one is loan applications, account openings, cross-selling, referrals, onboardings, birthdays and anniversaries, product views, and remarketing. So those are kind of the view as you move down the ladder there. But obviously there's some high-value interactions that you want to address first. Loan applications, obviously extremely high-value interaction. The next one I'll mention is moments of truth, as I said before. So, you know, having a negative or bad experience with a credit union, or even a positive one, can really help develop that customer experience. So, you know, there's obviously a link between those moments of truth and customer loyalty. So, I think as we look at what those are, those can help determine and guide your customer experience. So if we know that a customer is engaging with you at these certain points, either the positive or negative, then you can start to develop journeys around those specific moments. For example, here, these are put together by McKinsey Customer Research. So positive moments that you can really make an impact is they receive good financial advice, receive proactive proposal appropriate to their needs. So those are definitely some things that you want to look at. Negative, you know, can really have a big impact on a customer. Receive financial advice that was not appropriate, so obviously the opposite. And then no troubleshooting skills, was inflexible, and proactive proposal to buy products not appropriate to needs. So those are just some things you can think of as you're going through this journey building process. So usually at this stage you want to take what you know from your persona and your customer journey, and that's the point that you start building your digital demand strategy. So and as I look at this, it's really several different points here, but you can redefine and document your new demand generation process. So you're taking your personas, your buyer journey, and figuring out what you need to do here is crucial. You want to take all of this information, everything that you've done during customer experience planning, and really figure out what will be required to execute your plan, what changes will you have to make, what strategies, campaigns, tools, or technology will be required. So this is really that should be documented. So, you know, how you're addressing a new customer versus things that you're doing within the structure for your current customers. So, those are crucial there. And really, also part of this is how you're acquiring new customers, you know, and what their entire journey is. So, how you're onboarding, how you're retaining, cross-selling, upselling, and what should you do with customers that leave. So, really, the whole life cycle. And then other key components of this that we'll touch briefly on: data management strategy, content management strategy, channel management strategy. So as we mentioned before, what channels do you need to be in and what content do you need to have during those components. Wrapping it all up with a bow, what you're measuring, how you're measuring, the tools and technology required to implement all of these great new parts of your strategy, and then the resources and budget required to do this. So those are all very key components. There's quite a bit of play with each of these, but that gives you an idea of what you'll need to do overall. So digital lead framework. So really looking at your current life cycle, how you can optimize it for growth. There are 3 essential activities that you can center your focus on when putting together your digital lead framework. It's top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. So as I mentioned, top of funnel, that's really, you know, as you're looking at creating awareness or getting new customers, it's really where you can start to leverage and get a better view of the customers and how you align those with your core strategic values and goals. You can have a segmented view, but really the things that can start having a difference there are content, SEO, SEM, events, emails, blogs, and social media. Middle of the funnel, that's really when you convert somebody to an actual customer. So during that phase, they've already displayed buying behavior, they've engaged with you, they're considered a lead, and they're no longer anonymous, so you have more information about them. You can start reaching them with activities around nurture and really more personalized communication. So email, marketing automation, webinars, training, instructional information, and video. And then bottom of the funnel is current customers, they've already converted, and then every touch point from there, every communication that you have with them is an opportunity to create customer satisfaction and maintain a long-term mutually beneficial relationship. So really cross-sell, resell opportunities and referrals are key there. So if you have a happy customer, getting them to talk about you and engage more with your credit union. The thing that I said before about data management strategy. So this is a core component. I think as marketers, we oftentimes don't want to deal with data, but I will say that you have to deal with your data if you're looking to do this very integrated one-to-one approach. You'll need to look at what you have today, the tools and processes that are needed to manage your data. I think there are short-term fixes there and then long-term. Key data points required for all your internal groups, including marketing and sales and which system they reside. So if you're going to create a customer experience, you really have to figure out how you can reach the data to get to that end. And then ongoing, how you capture that data, how you refine the data, how you make it actionable. So being able to have that at your fingertips and how you can mine it for actionable insights. So whether your strategy is working, any new strategy that you need to develop can be done through those actionable insights. And then the process to optimize your data processes over time, I think that's easy to say and then very hard to do. So, I think we have to deal with data as marketers, and we have to coordinate that data. Even though it's a sizable task, it's one of the largest issues that I run into with most companies is data sitting in silos, not being actionable, not being able to use it. So looking at your infrastructure and understanding that is very important as part of this process. And then content management strategy. I will say that if you don't have investment in content management and developing content, then it's going to be very difficult to put together a customer experience strategy. It is really the engine that kind of generates and runs this entire marketing experience. So it's very important that you have a content management strategy, and conceptually, just in a matter of time, content marketing is its own discipline, and there are people that are much more experienced to talk to this, but it's an extensive process and it'll occur along all points of your marketing strategy. So it's important to have a strategy around this and to for it to be well defined, have consistent curation, and ways to create and distribute the content. So very important here. And there's always a lot of different types of content. So I think as you develop your strategy, you may understand a little bit about what works from the past, but also I always encourage people to try new things and get out there and see what content resonates, because there might be other things that you're not using today that you can start to leverage and get more traction out of. And then leveraging all of this information, you can start to look at the next component, which I think is underlying and what typically people want to know, what's the right channel strategy. So, we have all this data, we have content, so where do we publish it? Where do we start to go after these customers? This chart here is from Jim Morris. omnichannel banking. So they did a survey just to see how their customers are engaging with each of these and the satisfaction across. So the reason I pull this out is it has credit unions and the effective channels across the board. So obviously, number one there is online banking, which we've been talking about extensively through this webinar. But number one there, obviously branch interaction is going to continue to be that, ATM, your live call center, but also up there, mobile banking, email, not quite as much Facebook, and then Twitter. So I think it's always important to have a social strategy, but it may not be as important for your customers. Talking a little bit about each of these, so you probably already have a website. I don't think I'm probably addressing anybody here that doesn't have that, but I do want to call out some things that within a website are critical components. So, you know, as you look at your digital strategy and continue your site and provide ongoing investment, I think there are some overall things that can help with your digital experience and how you meet the challenge of this digital customer experience you put together. So I always, you know, recommendation to look at a few key components: call to action, making sure that your customer knows exactly what they can do. So giving them a path through your website and leading them down the path that you want them to take, but also the path that they want to take. Navigation, making it easy to effectively navigate your site, helping them get to what they want in 3 clicks or less is generally a best practice. Responsive design, as we mentioned before, mobile is huge. People are leveraging mobile to an nth degree. So I think it's important that you make sure that your website is responsive. And you know, many of you would say, oh yeah, a lot of people don't, you know, it's something that everybody should do, but I often see a lot of websites that don't have that responsive design. Making sure that you have forms. You want to convert leads from anonymous to known visitors. So if you have information that's valuable to them, judging whether it's appropriate to give them a form to get that information so you can start learning more about them. Social share, as I mentioned before, social may not be a great channel for credit unions, but I think it's a baseline for everybody to have these days. It's important to have a prominent location on your website for those opt-ins. These can be used for new members or potential customers that are interested in your offers. They can be used for a variety of communication channels. So if you're doing appropriate opt-ins on your website, you can use it for email, newsletters, alerts, or blogs. And then content or assets. So your website shouldn't be an empty shell. You should have information there. You should have assets. These are critical to creating value on your site. Why do people return to your website? There needs to be a reason. So it can be anything as simple as a blog, but having something there that allows you to interact more with your customer is always a benefit. SEO and paid search. So it's critical to the success of digital is how your site is ranked via organic and paid searches. So to create a customer experience-driven website, you've got to really align with Google. That's the core there. And your success rests in the ability to provide the most relevant links to what the users requested. So there's a lot of things around SEO and paid search, and if that's something that you feel is going to help benefit your customer experience strategy and can help get you more visibility, I encourage you all to look more into kind of the pieces that are required to improve your search rankings, which are all things that are listed on the slide. But it's a very dense topic, so I will brush lightly on that. Landing pages. So landing pages are just specific one-off web pages that are for the sole purpose of converting visitors from leads. So if you have a specific offer or an application or a loan, the ultimate, kind of purpose of the landing page is to get them to have a visitor fill in a form for contact or opt-in for more information. So really, if you're keeping these separate from your web page, you should keep in mind that they should be very simple. They should have one purpose or one offer. The content should be very, very exclusive to that one specific offer, and it should be sparse or bulleted if needed. And then the good thing about web pages is you can, these landing pages, you can test various headlines and body to determine the highest conversions. Video and multimedia, it's becoming such a huge part of what we do today. If you can synthesize your content into, very short sound bites, it's very helpful. So I always encourage that. You should have a call to action, so there should be a basic reason for your page. And you can test different things with here. So landing pages are really a great way to test different messaging, test different call to actions, all the different components, because it's not as risky as doing it on your web page. As we mentioned before, social media. So this is actually some information. There's a great study by Hope Shao and Per Ivy Shao called Presence to Purpose, Developing Social Media Strategies and Metrics for Credit Unions. So they are much bigger experts than I am in this, but I would say that social media has given credit unions the tools to initiate or guide market-driven brand and product-related conversations. I think it's important to have clear goals or strategic visions when looking at social platforms, and you must understand your audience. So if you have a good understanding of your audience, or you know how you want to address your audience, that's always good when looking at social. But I think how you use or engage each of these channels is very specific. But I think obviously they encourage, just based on how credit unions work with these different channels, that obviously website and online banking are just go-to, but Facebook and Twitter are probably the next step that you want to make sure that you have a good social media strategy as credit unions. Email. So a lot of people, and I hear this all the time, say email is dead. So I would not agree. It still has the highest return on investment of most of these things that we've talked about today. But the great thing about email is it really lets you start to craft this one-to-one strategy and start to test things and look at what's working with your customer base, what may be working with new customers. So when you're looking at email, I think there's some core things here. So really hone in on your subject lines, how you're segmenting. If you're able to utilize your data, you can get as close to one-to-one marketing as possible. You can use wireframes and dynamic content here, and pulling dynamic content based on a lot of different considerations. So you're able to really craft, if you look at an onboarding strategy, you can get very specific to how they've engaged with you, what they're interested in, what products they've signed up for within that onboarding strategy, and making sure that you're addressing that very specifically. And then making sure that you have email automation. I think obviously you can't do a one-to-one strategy with one-off emails. So campaigns or just doing mass email blasts, you're not able to get to a very synthesized customer experience across each of your different points in your journey. Making sure you have responsive design. Again, same thing here as I talked about in the web, that you really got to have responsive for mobile, and there's different ways to test that. But and then your database. So having the core database that you need to start executing these email campaigns the way that you want. Following up with metrics, so I think, as I mentioned before, just being able to look at really what you're wanting to do with your new improved customer experience strategy is key, and I think that will lead you to the right metrics. But I did want to give you 5 digital marketing metrics for success. So really these are identified by Salesforce as in their 2015 State of Marketing Report as greatest value metrics, and these can help guide. And I know a lot of people, when they're initially starting their process, are not able to get to a view of these, but it's really aspirational. And I think that everyone, number one, obviously revenue growth, return on investment is something that we all should be tracking. And it's a process to get there, I understand that. Customer satisfaction, so you can do this through looking at customer acquisition and retention. You can look at financial metrics, but also look at satisfaction surveys, surveys of people that engage with your customer service professionals or on your website. As I mentioned before, return on investment, obviously a part of that, looking at what investments from a marketing perspective are working or not working, customer retention rates, and I would say that usually you can measure this by looking at your customers at the start of a period minus any new customers that are acquired during that period, and it can gauge your customer loyalty and effectiveness of customer service. So if you're really looking to improve your engagement with current customers, this is something I would recommend. And then customer acquisition, tracking your new customers, so looking at metrics such as the number of leads you're getting, the conversion and close rates, the average customer value, number of days to close, and the customer acquisition costs here. But then there's some basics, right? So with each of those channels, with each of those methods of communicating throughout the customer journey, there are different things that can tell you how successful that you've been, and we as marketers are very familiar with those metrics, usually on a daily basis. I'd say that you identify or have a good, good KPIs, good metrics, you can start to identify the campaigns or channels and messaging that perform. You can test various parameters and how they impact your results and profitability. You're able to follow prospects through the funnel and life cycle, and better understand their stages and how you're converting those customers at each stage. And then look for benchmarks of overall success and track those to determine a delta. So what could we do, or what things are, if we're leaving revenue on the table, where that might be. And then really looking at a closed loop process. So how do we make changes to our strategy? How do we make changes to everything that we're doing here to take that next level? And I know from a time perspective, I just want to give a very brief overview of how we go do this in the marketing infrastructure. So LumaScape has this this great thing that they put out. So it's a little overwhelming for marketers, the number of tools and technology that's out there. So there's quite a few, but really if we look at the baseline, I think in order to start achieving customer experience plan and an effective customer journey, you really should, as marketers, have the ability to interact three systems: your customer relationship management, marketing automation, and content marketing systems. So those are the three baselines, and that investment is crucial, crucial part of your strategy to be able to do all of these. And these are topics in and of themselves, but CRMs allow you to track your current leads and customers, all their contact information, and then it helps you align with your sales team. Marketing automation, quite a few things you can do with marketing automation. You can use it as an automated email platform, landing page, tracking, data, revenue performance management, a lot that you can do through that. And then content marketing, so having a repository for your content, being able to build your website on that and have this really ability to deliver excellent customer service. They drive most of the websites and the layouts, and they just give you a consistent web experience. So again, all of these crucial to helping provide the things that we talked about before. When looking at your infrastructure, there's certain things that you need to look at. Obviously, your support staff, IT involvement, cost of license and development dollars. So if you need to invest in a platform or reinvest in a platform or develop things within the platform, obviously that's going to have additional cost. Whether you need an agency or not, so you may be able to do this all in-house, but a lot of times when you're doing this, you'll require agency involvement to help with that growth. Looking at your current infrastructure now, if it works for what you're trying to do now and after growth, and what that roadmap should be longer term. So if something is working for you now and you know that you're going in a certain direction and it won't work for you longer term, looking at what that might look like. And then the capability to fully leverage the tools. So a lot of the companies that I work with have these tools, but they're either not integrated, they're not using them fully. Marketing automation specifically, they're using it just as an email tool. So really looking at, are you able to get the most out of the tools that you have? If not, how do you do that? Or is it time to look at investment in something else that you can use? So all of this, I think, is obviously brushing over quite a few topics, but it can all look overwhelming in total. These are just some tools and some things that can help you guide your overall digital marketing strategy and putting together your demand gen and planning. So I would say that obviously much of this is done in tandem, so you're looking at a lot of these different things all at once, but I think that if you're looking to develop a solid customer experience and help improve customer acquisition and retention, you should really look at taking everything you're doing here and developing a long-term roadmap. It's one step at a time. Like I said, a lot of these things have to be done in tandem because you need results now. But looking at what you need longer term, if you can put this and start to synthesize this in an overall roadmap, it gives you a guidance in the progression of developing and evolving your overall strategy. So I think it's really key to be able to look at what you need now, what you need longer term, to really get to where you need to be. And it's a step of many miles, but I think that there are things within each of those components that you can do to affect change. So I firmly believe that, and good luck to all of you that are making those changes today. So with that, I will turn it back over to Adi.